The hum of the engine is a constant companion, a familiar rumble that's been the soundtrack to my life for the better part of 2 decades. It's a sound that can lull you to sleep or drive you mad, depending on the day. Today, it's just there, a steady presence as I pilot this 18-wheeler down the interstate. The cab is my own little world, a rolling office with a view that changes by the mile. The scent of stale coffee and the faint, lingering smell of diesel are as much a part of my home as the pictures of my kids tucked into the sun visor. My current run is a valuable one, a straight shot to New York City. The manifest lists the cargo in vague terms, specialized electronics, but the insurance value tells me everything I need to know. This isn't your run-of-the-mill shipment of paper towels or canned goods. This is the kind of load that makes you a little more careful, a little more aware of the world around you. The kind of load that can make or break your reputation with the company. I've been with them for a good 10 years now, built up a solid record, no major incidents, always on time. That's the name of the game in this line of work. Reliability. The journey started like any other. A pre-dawn start, the air crisp and cool. I watched the sun come up over the plains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It's a sight that never gets old. One of the perks of the job that people who work in an office will never understand. Miles of open road stretched out before me, a black ribbon cutting through the heart of the country. I settled in for the long haul, my mind on the miles ahead, the drop-off in the city, and the drive back home. The first few hours were a blur of familiar landscapes, truck stops, and the endless stream of four-wheelers zipping past me like angry hornets. It was just another day at the office, another load, another destination. The rhythm of the road was in my blood, a steady beat that carried me forward. As I crossed into Pennsylvania, the landscape began to change. The flat, open plains gave way to rolling hills and dense forests. The road started to curve and dip, demanding more of my attention. It was a welcome change, something to break the monotony of the straightaways. I've driven this route more times than I can count, but there's always something new to see if you're looking close enough. An old barn with a fresh coat of paint, a field of wildflowers in bloom, a hawk circling high above. These are the little things that keep you sane out here, the small moments of beauty in a world of asphalt and steel. I was making good time. The engine purring along, the miles ticking away. Everything was going according to plan, or so I thought. The road has a way of reminding you that you're never really in control, that at any moment, the ordinary can become anything but. And, on this particular day, in the heart of Pennsylvania, the ordinary was about to take a sharp and unexpected turn. The afternoon sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the road as I navigated the winding hills of central Pennsylvania. The scenery was beautiful in a rugged, untamed kind of way. Thick forests of oak and maple crowded the shoulders of the highway, their leaves just beginning to hint at the fiery colors of fall. It was the kind of day that makes you appreciate the solitude of the open road, the freedom of being your own boss, even if it's just for the miles between point A and point B. I had my window down, the air fresh and clean, a welcome change from the recycled air of the cab. It was then that I saw it, a quick, almost imperceptible flicker of movement in my passenger side mirror. It was just a flash, a brief glint of sunlight on something flapping in the wind. I blinked, my eyes darting back to the mirror. Nothing, just the solid, reassuring bulk of my trailer, the taut canvas cover of the flatbed looking just as it should. I dismissed it as a trick of the light, a bird flying past, or maybe just my mind playing games on me after too many hours on the road. It happens. You start seeing things, your thoughts start to wander. It's a part of the job. But a few miles later, it happened again. This time, it was more distinct, a definite ripple in the tarp, a quick, snapping motion that wasn't just a wind. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I've been doing this long enough to know that you don't ignore those little feelings, those gut instincts that tell you something isn't right. It's the same feeling you get when you see a four-wheeler swerving in and out of lanes up ahead, or when the air pressure in one of your tires just doesn't feel right. It's a sixth sense that you develop out here, a survival instinct honed by countless miles and close calls. My mind started to race. What if a strap had come loose? What if the tarp was starting to tear? With a load like this, I couldn't afford to take any chances. The thought of pulling over was a frustrating one. I was on a tight schedule, and every minute spent on the side of the road was a minute I wasn't getting closer to New York. The dispatcher's voice echoed in my head, a constant reminder of the importance of being on time. But the image of that flapping tarp, the flicker of doubt in my mind, was stronger. I knew what I had to do. With a heavy sigh, I flicked on my turn signal and began to look for a safe place to pull over. The decision was made, but the feeling of dread was just beginning to set in. I had a bad feeling about this, a very bad feeling. Finding a safe spot to pull over a fully loaded 18-wheeler on a winding, two-lane highway is no small feat. The shoulders were narrow, and the traffic was steady. I had to keep going for another few miles, my eyes scanning the side of the road, my heart pounding in my chest with every passing minute. Finally, I saw it, a small, gravel pull-off, probably an old forgotten rest stop from a bygone era. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I carefully maneuvered the rig onto the gravel, the tires crunching loudly in the sudden silence. I killed the engine, and the world outside the cab seemed to rush in. The sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves suddenly amplified. For a moment, I just sat there, the keys still in the ignition, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I was hoping, praying, that this was all just a false alarm, that I'd get out, find a loose strap, tighten it, and be on my way in 5 minutes. A minor inconvenience, a story to tell the other drivers at the next truck stop. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. It was a feeling I knew all too well, the same cold dread I had felt the time a rookie at a forklift had nearly dropped a pallet of fragile cargo right in front of me. It was the feeling of something being terribly, irrevocably wrong. I finally forced myself to open the door and step out into the bright afternoon sun. The air was warm, but a chill ran down my spine. I walked around to the back of the trailer, my boots kicking up small clouds of dust. From a distance, everything looked fine. The tarp was still in place, the strap seemed tight. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe I had been imagining things. Maybe it was just the wind. But as I got closer, my heart sank. There was a section of the tarp, right in the middle, that was looser than the rest. It wasn't flapping wildly, but it had a definite sag to it, a subtle indentation that shouldn't have been there. My hands were trembling as I reached for the strap, my fingers fumbling with the buckle. I pulled it loose, then another and another, my movements becoming more frantic. I threw back the heavy canvas, my breath catching in my throat. The space where a large wooden crate should have been was empty, a gaping hole in the otherwise perfectly packed trailer. For a few seconds, I just stared, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. It was impossible. It couldn't be gone. I had checked everything myself before I left. I had double-checked. But the empty space was undeniable, a stark and silent testament to my failure. The world seemed to spin around me, the sounds of the forest fading into a dull roar in my ears. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. The valuable cargo, the specialized electronics, the shipment that my job depended on, one of the crates was gone. And it was all my fault. The initial shock gave way to a wave of pure, unadulterated panic. My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of thoughts and fears. I thought about my boss, a stern but fair man who valued reliability above all else. I thought about my wife and kids, the life I had built for them, a life that was paid for by the miles I drove. I saw it all slipping away, disappearing into the same void that had swallowed the missing crate. For a few wild moments, I considered just getting back in the truck and driving away, pretending I hadn't noticed. But I knew that was a coward's way out, a temporary solution that would only lead to a bigger, more permanent problem. I had to go back. I had to at least try to find it. The chances were slim. I knew that. A wooden crate falling off a moving truck on a busy highway. It was probably smashed to pieces, its valuable contents scattered across the road, or worse, causing a major accident. But I had to try. It was the only option I had left. Turning an 18-wheeler around on a narrow, two-lane road is a logistical nightmare. I had to drive for what felt like an eternity before I found a place wide enough to even attempt it, a dirt road leading off into the woods. The process was slow and nerve-wracking, a 10-point turn that felt like it took an hour. With every turn of the wheel, I could feel the weight of my mistake pressing down on me. I was no longer a professional, a seasoned driver with a spotless record. I was a fool, a careless amateur, who had made the most basic of errors. As I started to retrace my route, a new kind of despair set in. The world outside my window, the same scenery that had seemed so beautiful just a short time ago, now looked bleak and unforgiving. Every piece of debris on the side of the road, every discarded tire and broken bottle, looked like a fragment of my shattered career. I drove at a crawl, my eyes scanning the shoulder of the road, my heart leaping into my throat every time I saw something that even vaguely resembled a wooden box. The miles crawled by, each one a testament to my growing hopelessness. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long, distorted shadows that played tricks on my eyes. I saw the crate a dozen times, only to have it dissolve into a pile of rocks or a discarded piece of furniture. As I got closer, the other drivers on the road, the ones heading in the right direction, the ones who were still on schedule, seemed to mock me with their steady, confident progress. They were a reminder of what I had been just a few hours before, a member of a tribe that I now felt exiled from. I was alone out here, alone with my mistake, on a desperate, seemingly impossible quest to undo what I had done. The search was a slow, agonizing process. With every mile that passed, the sliver of hope I was clinging to grew thinner. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful spectacle that I was in no mood to appreciate. The fading light was my enemy, a ticking clock that was working against me. Once darkness fell, the chances of spotting the crate would dwindle to almost nothing. I passed a gravel pull-off where I had made the dreadful discovery, a place that would forever be etched in my memory. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of self-loathing through me. How could I have been so careless? I had been doing this for 20 years. 20 years of securing loads, of checking straps, of making sure everything was just right. And all it took was one moment of complacency, one lapse in concentration to bring it all crashing down. My mind started to wander, replaying the morning in my head. Had I been distracted, rushed? I couldn't remember anything out of the ordinary. It was just a routine morning, a routine departure. But somewhere along the line, I had messed up. And now I was paying the price. I started to think about my family, about the phone call I would have to make to my wife. How could I explain this to her? How could I tell her that I had jeopardized everything we had worked for? The thought was a physical pain, a sharp, stabbing sensation in my chest. I thought about my kids, their smiling faces in the picture on my sun visor. I was their hero, the strong, dependable father who could handle anything. What would they think of me now? The road stretched on, a seemingly endless ribbon of asphalt. The forests on either side of the highway grew darker, more foreboding. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches like skeletal fingers pointing at me, accusing me. I felt like I was in a nightmare, a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from. I was starting to lose hope. The crate was gone. It had probably been picked up by someone else, or smashed to smithereens, or rolled down an embankment into a place where it would never be found. I was on a fool's errand, a desperate, pathetic attempt to outrun the consequences of my own stupidity. I was tired, I was hungry, and I was defeated. I was ready to give up, to turn around and face the music. But then, just as I was about to make that final, soul-crushing decision, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. My heart suddenly pounding in my chest with a renewed, frantic energy. It was a flash of brown against the green of a grassy slope, just off the shoulder of the road. It was partially obscured by a thicket of bushes, but there was something about the shape, the sharp, unnatural angles, that made it stand out from the rocks and tree stumps that littered the landscape. It was a long shot. I knew that. It could be anything, a discarded piece of plywood, an old wooden sign, 100 other things that weren't a large wooden crate full of valuable electronics. But it was the only hope I had. I pulled the truck over as far as I could, the tires sinking into the soft earth of the shoulder. I didn't even bother to turn off the engine. I just threw the door open and scrambled out, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I half ran, half stumbled towards the object, my eyes locked on it, praying that it wouldn't dissolve into something else as I got closer. The ground was uneven, and I nearly twisted my ankle on a loose rock. But I didn't slow down. I pushed my way through the thick bushes, the branches scratching at my face and arms. And then I saw it. It was really there. The crate. It was lying on its side, nestled against the fence of a small, rustic farmhouse. It was scuffed and scratched, and one of the corners was splintered, but it was intact. It was whole. A wave of relief so powerful that it almost brought me to my knees washed over me. I just stood there for a moment, my hands on my knees, gasping for breath. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the scene, and in that moment, it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The farmhouse in the background, with its weathered red paint and wraparound porch, looked like something out of a painting. A thin curl of smoke rose from its chimney, and I could hear the faint sound of a dog barking in the distance. I approached the crate cautiously, as if it might disappear if I made a sudden move. I ran my hands over its rough, wooden surface, my fingers tracing the stenciled letters that marked it as part of my shipment. It was real. It was here. I had found it. I had actually found it. A laugh escaped my lips, a strange, choked sound that was half sob, half giggle. I had done it. I had pulled off a miracle. The nightmare was over. Or at least, the worst part of it was. Now, I just had to figure out how to get a 200-pound crate back up to the road and into my trailer. But that was a problem for a minute from now. For this one glorious moment, I was just going to enjoy the overwhelming, all-consuming feeling of pure, unadulterated relief. I had been to the brink, and I had come back, and in that moment, the world felt full of possibilities again. The adrenaline-fueled euphoria of finding the crate quickly gave way to the practical challenge of getting it back into my trailer. It was a heavy, awkward thing, and the slope it had rolled down was steep and slippery. As I stood there catching my breath and contemplating my next move, the front door of the farmhouse creaked open. An old man with a weathered face and a kind smile stepped out onto the porch. He was holding a mug of what I presumed was coffee, and he looked at me with a curious, but not unfriendly, expression. "Everything all right out here, son?" he asked, his voice a slow, gentle drawl. I explained the situation, the words tumbling out of me in a rush of embarrassment and relief. I told him about my mistake, about the frantic search, about the sheer, dumb luck of spotting the crate from the road. He listened patiently, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. When I was finished, he just nodded slowly. "Happens to the best of us," he said, his voice full of a simple, unassuming wisdom. "Let me give you a hand with that." He disappeared into a nearby barn and returned a few minutes later with a set of sturdy ropes and a small, wheeled dolly. Together, we managed to wrestle the heavy crate back up the slope and onto the shoulder of the road. It was hard, sweaty work, but the old man was surprisingly strong, and his calm, steady presence was a welcome antidote to my frayed nerves. Once the crate was safely back in the trailer, I began to examine the straps and the tarp, trying to figure out exactly what had gone wrong. And then I saw it, a small, almost insignificant detail that I had overlooked in my haste that morning. One of the buckles on a key strap was corroded, its spring mechanism weak and unreliable. I had tightened it, I was sure of that, But it hadn't held. Over the miles, the constant vibration of the road had worked it loose, and the crate, freed from its restraints, had simply rolled off the trailer. It was such a simple, stupid thing. A $5 piece of hardware that had nearly cost me my career. I felt a fresh wave of foolishness wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the old farmer, for his kindness and his help. Gratitude for the simple, dumb luck that had allowed me to find the crate, and gratitude for the lesson I had learned. I thanked the old man profusely, offering him some money for his trouble, which he politely refused. "Just pay it forward, son," he said with a warm smile. "We all need a little help now and then." As I drove away from the farmhouse, the last rays of the setting sun disappearing behind the hills, I felt like a different person. The long ride to New York was no longer just a job, a series of miles to be ticked off. It was a second chance, a gift. I drove with a newfound sense of caution, my eyes constantly darting to the mirrors, my ears attuned to the slightest sound from the trailer. I made it to New York without any further incidents, the drop-off going as smoothly as I could have hoped. No one was any the wiser about the drama that had unfolded on a lonely stretch of highway in rural Pennsylvania, but I knew, and I would never forget, the road home was a quiet, reflective one. The hum of the engine was the same, the landscapes were the same, but I was different. I had been reminded of a simple, fundamental truth that I had forgotten in the routine of my daily life, that no matter how experienced you are, no matter how confident you feel, you are never immune to making mistakes, and that sometimes the biggest disasters can be caused by the smallest oversights. It was a hard lesson to learn, but one that I knew would make me a better driver and a better man, and for that I was grateful. The road had taken something from me that day, but it had also given me something back, a story to tell, and a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life.